It was supposed to be just another interview. Lights. Laughter. A little nostalgia, a few plugs. Mike Tyson on a morning talk show, promoting his memoir and a new Netflix documentary. He walked onto the stage with that quiet storm energy, calm, maybe a little worn down, but sharp. Always sharp. The kind of presence that makes people sit up straighter without realizing it. He took his seat. Flashed a small smile. Then the host said, with a teasing glint, "Mike, we've got something for you today." Something unexpected. Tyson arched an eyebrow. "Oh yeah? What is it?" From off stage, a producer stepped forward and handed over a thick envelope, elegant, off-white, sealed in gold. The host held it gently, like it might melt in her hands. "This came in late last night. All the way from Burkina Faso. It's from the president, Ibrahim Trrower. And, it's for you." A hush fell. One of those heavy silences that feels like a held breath. Mike's jaw flexed. A subtle shift in his body, like a fighter squaring up instinctively. "He said we could read it aloud," the host continued, softer now. "But only with your permission." Tyson hesitated. Just for a moment. Then nodded. "Go on." The letter was opened. And the moment it began, the room changed. "Dear Mr. Tyson. My name is Ibrahim Trrower, President of Burkina Faso. But I write this not as a leader, not today. I write as a boy. A boy with nothing. A boy who once sat in a dark room in West Africa, watching your fight through the flicker of a broken television." Tyson blinked. His breathing shifted. Something stirred behind his eyes. "You weren't just a champion. You were proof that survival could become greatness. That someone with nothing, no name, no chance, could stand up and make the world take notice." He leaned forward, elbows on knees, completely still. "When my country was hurting, when hope felt out of reach, I remembered you, not your fists. Your eyes, Mike. The pain in them. The rage. The unbreakable will. And now, I try to carry that same fire as I lead." You could hear someone sniffle in the audience. "Thank you for showing me that strength isn't in winning, it's in rising. Again and again. Even when it hurts." The host looked up. Mike Tyson turned away. "Give me a second," he murmured, barely above a whisper. But the tears had already started. Slow. Reluctant. Like a dam cracking under pressure it's held for years. He rubbed his face with both hands, trying to pull himself together. But his voice betrayed him. "He saw me," he said, almost laughing through the pain. "Not the knockouts. Not the glory. Me." His voice caught in his throat. "When I was a kid, I was homeless. 14. Sleeping in stairwells. Stealing. Praying every night I'd just not wake up." A collective gasp rippled through the studio. "I fought because it was the only thing that made me visible. That's all. Not for money. Not for belts. Just so people would see me." And then, looking into the camera, almost through it, he said. "And this man, this president, halfway across the world, he saw that." He exhaled shakily. A lifetime of pain in one breath. And now he's leading a nation. Mike broke down. No cuts. No commercial break. Just a legend unraveling on live television, his grief and pride tangled together like wires sparking in the open air. The host said nothing. Just placed the letter gently on the table like it was holy. Tyson sat hunched, tears streaming. The toughest man to ever enter a ring, now exposed in a way no opponent ever managed. And yet, he wasn't weak. He was real. He was human. This wasn't about boxing anymore. It was about the invisible battles. The ones fought alone. The kind where the only prize is surviving long enough for someone, anyone, to understand you. And finally, someone had. After the break, Tyson was still wiping his eyes, the letter folded carefully in his hands like it held his past, his pain, and something more, validation. The host leaned in. "Mike, want to keep going?" He nodded. Not with his usual swagger, but with clarity. "Yeah," he said. "They need to hear this." When the cameras returned, everything was different. The stage was the same. But the energy changed. Deeper. Honest. Sacred. "Ibrahim Trrower," Tyson said, voice hoarse, "I've never met you, but you wrote to me like you knew every inch of my soul." He looked down at the letter, fingers tracing its edges. "I wasn't supposed to make it. I was a kid with nothing but fists. I didn't even know what love was." The crowd sat frozen. But this man, this stranger, he saw something in me. Not muscle. Not rage. He saw survival. And he made it mean something. Mike looked around the studio, as if seeing it for the first time. People don't talk about what it costs. What it takes to just get through the night. The nights where you don't want to wake up. But this letter. This letter told me. I'm not the only one. And suddenly, everyone in that room, in front of their TVs, phones, whatever, felt it too. This was no longer a story about fame. Or victory. Or pain. It was about connection. Across countries. Across trauma. Across time. It was about a fighter and a president. A letter. And the moment when Iron Mike, the warrior, finally let the world see the wounds he'd always hidden. That night, as New York buzzed under flashing headlines and trending hashtags, a quieter moment was unfolding half a world away. In a humble government office in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Trrower sat alone, watching. The TV screen cast soft light across his desk. A ceiling fan turned with a lazy hum overhead. The streets outside were quiet, his security detail stationed at a respectful distance. They knew this moment wasn't political. It was personal. On the screen, Mike Tyson was crying. Trrower's own eyes brimmed. He bowed his head, wiped a tear with the back of his hand, and whispered in French. "Il a compris." He understood. His office wasn't adorned with power. No golden frames of shaking hands or state dinners. On the wall behind him, children with chalk-stained fingers in crumbling classrooms. Women in open-air clinics. Young soldiers clutching radios instead of rifles. And among them, one photo in a simple black frame. Mike Tyson. Bare-chested. 17. Raw. Unforgiving. Burning with something more than ambition. That wasn't a photo of a boxer. It was a symbol. Of defiance. Of survival. Just then, an aide stepped in quietly with a tablet in hand. "Sir, the UN reached out. They saw the segment. They're asking about the education initiative again." Trrower didn't look away from the screen. "Tell them they'll have to wait." Wait? He nodded, more to himself than to her. "Tonight, the world doesn't need policy papers." He narrowed his gaze as Tyson's image filled the screen. "Tonight, the world needs truth." Back in New York, the internet had caught fire. Within hours, the clip had gone viral. Mike Tyson weeping over the president's letter was now on every screen. Every platform. News anchors dissected it. Athletes shared it. Schools streamed it in classrooms. In African refugee camps, children huddled around shared phones and cheered. But while the world reacted, a deeper story was about to unfold. Just after midnight, Tyson's phone lit up. Unknown number. Foreign code. He hesitated. Then picked up. "Hello." The voice on the other end was calm. Steady. Deep. Mr. Tyson, this is Ibrahim Trrower. Mike's throat tightened. You're him. I am. And you're the man who once taught me how to survive, before I even had shoes. Silence. Neither spoke like legends. They spoke like men who had bled in silence. Thank you, Mike whispered, voice breaking. But Trrower replied gently, no. Thank you. You taught me to stand tall, when the world insisted I crawl. Then came the question. Mike, will you come to Burkina Faso? Tyson blinked, stunned. What for? Not to fight, Trrower said. To witness. To show people what survival really looks like. There was no hesitation. In that moment, the boxer and the president became something more than what the world called them. They became brothers in pain. In purpose. And a bridge, one built from scars, was forming between them. Tyson didn't sleep that night. He sat in silence, the letter in his lap, reading it over and over. It was plain. Honest. No fluff. Just a dagger of truth carved onto a page. At 13, I didn't fight with gloves. I fought with hunger. It hit him like a jab to the ribs. He remembered it all. Stealing bread. Sleeping in abandoned buildings. Getting locked up. Everyone giving up on him, except for one trainer who saw a flicker of something under all that rage. Just like Ibrahim, back then, had no one, until he found his own fire. Morning came. His team arrived at the studio, their usual agenda in hand, sponsor meetings, magazine shoots, training footage. Mike took the schedule. Ripped it clean in two. I'm going to Burkina Faso. Their jaws dropped. Wait, you're serious? He turned, eyes fierce and unshakable. I'm not doing this for PR. This isn't about legacy. This is about him. And the kid I used to be. 2 days later, Mike Tyson stepped off a plane into the dry, golden light of West Africa. No fans. No photographers. No staged handshakes. Just heat. Dust. And the hum of something real. As his car moved through the city, barefoot kids sprinted alongside it, shouting his name like it was a battle cry. Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson. He waved back, eyes wide. Humbled. A little undone. He wasn't there to be a champion. He was there to listen. President Trrower met him outside the modest government building. No ceremony. No speeches. Just two men, locking eyes across time and struggle. Their handshake was long. Firm. No words needed. Later, they drove into the countryside, to a village school barely standing, with paint peeling off the walls and windows patched with cardboard. But the laughter? Loud. Joyful. Alive. In a dusty classroom, Mike noticed a boy in the corner. Swollen eye. Busted lip. He crouched down beside him. You fight? He asked gently. The boy nodded. Mike leaned in close. So did I, he whispered. But let me tell you something. The strongest move you'll ever make, is the one you don't throw. He pulled his championship ring from his pocket. Heavy, gold, a symbol of the battles he had won, and survived. He placed it in the boy's palm. The boy stared at it, wide-eyed, trembling. Then Trrower knelt beside them, voice low and warm. In this country, you're not defined by your bruises. He touched the boy's chest. You're defined by what's in here. The boy broke down. And so did Mike. That night, the boxer and the president sat on a rooftop under a sky scattered with stars. The lights of Ouagadougou flickered below them like fireflies in the dark. Trrower handed Mike a small wooden box. Inside, dozens of letters, carefully folded, covered in pencil and crayon. The children, he said softly. They heard what I wrote you. Now, they wanted to write you back. Mike ran his hands over them like sacred paper. And in that moment, he understood. This wasn't just about his story anymore. It was about the stories that would come next. Mike sat in the courtyard, night wrapped around him like a quiet cloak. In his lap, the small wooden box President Trrower had handed him. He opened it with reverence. Inside, a bundle of letters, hand-folded, worn, some written on scrap paper, others on the back of school assignments. Dozens of voices, tiny echoes from children scattered across Burkina Faso. He picked up the first. Dear Mike Tyson. You are a lion who walked through fire. Please don't forget us. His eyes scanned the page, then another. My papa died when our village was attacked. But now I think maybe I can be strong like you. His throat tightened. He clutched the letters to his chest, like something precious, fragile. These, he whispered, voice gravel and water, these mean more than any belt. More than the money. More than every title I ever held. President Trrower sat across from him, his expression calm but heavy. And now you see, he said softly, pain builds bridges that fame never could. A hush fell over them. Even the insects outside the courtyard seemed to go still. Only the faint rustling of paper moved through the silence, a quiet wind through broken hearts. Then, one letter stopped him cold. It was smaller, written on torn notebook paper, folded neatly like a secret. He unfolded it with care. Dear Mr. Tyson. My name is Katrine. I am 11. My father was a soldier. He used to say your fights made him brave. He died last year. I try to be brave now too. I saw you cry. That means even lions cry. So maybe I can cry too. Mike stared at the page. His hands trembled. He was no longer in the courtyard. He was 11 again, back in Brooklyn, watching his mother grow thin and tired, lying on a mattress that sagged to the floor. Feeling unseen. Unwanted. Unloved. He said the words aloud, almost like an incantation. Even lions cry. Trrower watched him, eyes glistening. That boy, he said. He lives nearby. Mike didn't speak. He just nodded. At sunrise, they drove for hours through golden, bone-dry roads. Children chased the dust behind their truck, waving. Women balanced jugs on their heads, eyes steady. Goats, bikes, stray dogs, all passed like flashes of memory. Eventually, they reached the village. No fanfare. No cameras. Just homes made of red clay, and a silence that carried weight. Then, Katrine. He stepped outside, barefoot, small frame rigid with nerves. In his hand, a photo of his father in uniform, faded, bent at the corners, clutched like a lifeline. When he saw Mike, he didn't run. He froze. He wasn't seeing a sports legend. He was seeing a mirror. Mike walked up slowly, knelt so they were eye to eye. You're braver than I ever was, he said gently. Katrine's voice was barely a whisper. But I cry. Mike gave him a small, broken smile. So do I. And with that, the boy lunged forward, arms wrapping around Mike's neck. It wasn't a photo op hug. It wasn't clean. It wasn't rehearsed. It was desperate. Like he'd been waiting his whole life to be held and not let go. Mike's arms tightened around him, and suddenly, the man who had once been called the baddest on the planet began to sob. Hard. Not the quiet kind. The kind that rocks your body. That rips out of your chest like it's been waiting for decades. Behind them, the president stood at a distance, hand on his heart, tears in his eyes. He knew what this was. This wasn't a reunion. It was recognition. It was grief finding company. They sat later beneath a mango tree, shaded from the heat. Katrine rested against Mike's side, clutching his father's photo. Will you leave too? He asked, without looking up. Mike paused. Then looked down at him, steady. No. I'll be back. That's a promise. And this time, it wasn't a gesture. It was a vow. 2 days later, Mike was back in America. A major network interview was already lined up. Big studio. Big audience. The host was chipper, playful. You've been hard to find lately, Mike. Word is, you were in Africa. What were you doing, scoping out your next fight club? He smiled, faintly. No, he said. I was being healed. By an 11-year-old boy. Silence. The audience stopped breathing. He reached into his jacket, unfolded a worn, creased piece of paper. Katrine's letter. He held it up like a relic. Even lions cry, he read. His voice cracked mid-sentence. His eyes brimmed again. And right there, on live TV, Mike Tyson cried. The host looked down. Her smile faded into something solemn. Respectful. I met kids, Mike said, who've lost everything. Their homes. Their parents. Their safety. And they've got more heart than half the champions I've ever known. Then, straight into the camera, direct, unfiltered. Ibrahim Trrower, thank you. You reminded me that real strength isn't how hard you hit. He touched his chest. It's how open your heart stays after everything. The audience didn't clap. They cried. Quietly. Fully. Because in that moment, they weren't watching a boxer. They were witnessing something far more rare, a man finding peace in the middle of his pain. The next morning, before sunrise, Mike's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered instinctively. Yeah. Mike Tyson. Yes. Who's this? It's Ibrahim Trrower. Another pause. Then Trrower's voice came soft, clear. I saw what you did for Katrine. That wasn't just a visit. You gave him something no one else could, you made him feel seen. And in doing that, you healed something. In him. In yourself. Mike said nothing. He didn't have to. Trrower continued. I want you to come back. Not for one boy. For all of them. Speak to the youth. Tell your story. Show them what it means to rise from rock bottom. Mike swallowed hard. You don't know what that means to me. Trrower replied, voice steady. They didn't need weeks to organize or a team of strategists. The decision was made in a moment, 2 voices across a line, 2 lives carved from hardship. And within 48 hours, Mike Tyson was back in the sky. No limos. No headlines. No handlers trailing behind him. This trip wasn't about legacy. It was about healing. About turning old wounds into bridges for those still limping behind. For once, Mike Tyson wasn't fighting for glory. He was fighting for others. The schoolyard in Ouagadougou pulsed with energy. Rows of students sat shoulder to shoulder in the dust, uniforms faded by sun and time. Some clutched notebooks. Others held on to crumpled magazine clippings, worn images of Tyson from decades ago, their edges curled, their colors faded. He arrived with no fanfare. No spotlight. Just a man in plain clothes and weathered shoes, stepping forward like someone with something sacred to say. A single chair sat at the front. A translator beside him. Nothing else. He sat. Took a breath. And began. I used to think I was just muscle. A weapon. Something people used and feared. But a child helped me remember I had a heart. His voice was slow, measured. Every word felt like it had been carried across oceans and years of silence. He told them about Katrine. About the death of his mother, the chaos of his youth, the prison bars, the loneliness. The ring that once gave him purpose, only because nothing else had. I didn't fight because I was strong. I fought because I didn't know how else to cry. A hush fell across the crowd. In the back, boys sat straighter. Girls leaned in, eyes wide. Some began to tremble, not in fear, but in recognition. Mike rose. He walked into the crowd, pausing in front of a quiet boy in the third row. "You," he said, voice soft but sure. "You think no one sees you." The boy's head dropped. "But I do. You're stronger than you know, not because you've never broken, but because you keep getting back up." The boy started to cry. Then another. And another. And suddenly, what began as a speech turned into something else entirely. It became a mirror. And for the first time, these children saw themselves not as forgotten, but as fighters. That evening, under a violet sky and 1,000 stars, Mike and President Trrower sat side by side, their chairs angled toward nothing but the night. No press. No talking points. Just silence and space. After a while, Mike turned to him. "Why'd you write that letter?" he asked, voice low. Trrower smiled, eyes distant. "Because the world only saw your fists. I saw the boy behind them. And I believed he still had something to give." Mike didn't reply right away. His throat closed up. He blinked hard. Trrower leaned forward. "You reminded us that strength isn't measured in how many punches you land. It's in how many times you rise when everything inside you says stay down." Mike nodded slowly. "That's all I ever wanted," he whispered. "To stand." They didn't shake hands. They held each other's wrists, firm, steady. The way only two survivors can. By sunrise, the photos were spreading. Not staged portraits, not press shots. Just truth, Mike sitting on the ground with kids around him. A young girl pressing a flower into his hand. A boy gripping Mike's fingers like he was the last solid thing in the world. These images didn't go viral because of celebrity. They went viral because they felt real. The world saw what it had forgotten. That even those who've been broken beyond recognition still have the power to build something beautiful. Mike Tyson left Burkina Faso with no championship belt. But he carried something heavier. A peace he'd never known. And Trrower? People saw him now not just as a head of state, but as a man who had listened, not to applause, but to pain. Back in New York, the same studio welcomed Mike again. The same lights. The same stage. But everything else had changed. The host smiled as he walked in. "Well, Mike, you've been off the radar. Africa, huh? Let me guess, scoping out your next big comeback." Mike chuckled once, then let the smile fade. "No," he said. "I wasn't preparing for a fight. I was learning how to let go." The room quieted. He reached into his coat pocket and unfolded a small, carefully kept drawing. A child's hand had sketched it, Mike holding hands with a small boy, with Ibrahim Trrower standing behind them. All three smiling. Mike held it up. His voice cracked. "He told me he doesn't want to fight anymore. He just wants to grow." The studio froze. The host stared, unsure what to say. Mike continued. "That boy gave me something I never knew I needed, peace. And Trrower, he gave me direction." He wiped a tear from his cheek. And in that moment, the world didn't see the fighter who once terrorized opponents. They saw a man, weary, weathered, and finally, whole. After the interview, Mike sat quietly in his dressing room. The crowd was gone. The lights dimmed. The energy had settled. A staff member knocked softly and entered, holding a brown envelope. "Just came in," she said. "International mail." He took it with quiet hands. The handwriting was familiar. He opened the envelope slowly, almost reverently. Inside, a letter from Trrower. "My brother. They call me president. But I'm just a man who dreams. I dream of peace. Of voices being heard before fists are raised. Your visit reminded us all that pain is not an ending. It's an invitation. To feel. To rebuild. To begin again. Burkina Faso thanks you. I thank you. And the boy. The boy sleeps peacefully now. Mike stared at the words. Then lowered the page, closed his eyes, and whispered a prayer, not for fame, not for forgiveness, but for all the broken children still waiting for someone to see them. He pressed the letter against his heart. And for the first time in his life, it didn't feel like he was holding on to a fight. It felt like he was holding on to hope. I was never the baddest man on the planet, he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. I was just a kid, waiting for someone to listen. And finally, someone had. Just 1 week. That's all it took to turn silence into a voice. Pain into purpose. A fighter into something far more lasting. Now, back in Harlem, Mike stood on the edge of a balcony above a cracked concrete courtyard. Below, a small group of kids were sparring, gloves too big, footwork clumsy, laughter spilling between jabs. He wasn't their coach. He didn't shout advice or correct stances. He was simply there. Still. Watching. Witnessing. One of the younger boys lost his footing and fell hard. There was a ripple of chuckles from the others. Mike moved without hesitation. He walked down, knelt beside the boy, and offered his hand. No shame in falling, he said. Every time you get up, you build something no one can take. The boy wiped his nose with his sleeve, nodded, and stood. Mike gave him a nod back, nothing more. It was enough. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket and looked at the screen. A photo had arrived, sent from thousands of miles away. Burkina Faso. In the image, me stood barefoot and beaming outside a newly built gym. The sign above the door read: Tyson Hope Center. Funded by the people. Built for the future. Endorsed by President Ibrahim Trrower. Mike stared at it for a long time. A gym, not for champions of belts, but of spirit. Not born from violence, but from belief. He let out a quiet breath. One hand pressed the phone to his chest. Once, the world had feared his name. Now, a child on the other side of the world saw him as a reason to believe in tomorrow. And that was everything.